Hi, my name is Mercedes, some say Mercedes, Myra Great Munnerlyn. Graduated from Howard High School in 1966.
Hi, I'm Francina Grant, and I'm a graduate of the class of 1980 from Howard High School.
Hi, my name is Jaqueline Tucker, and I graduated from Howard High School in 1966.
I enjoyed my high school days. We were really prepared for our future at Howard High School. We had a wide variety of courses for the curriculum, and you chose whichever curriculum would suit you best. I followed the academic curriculum because I wanted to go to college after I graduated from high school.
Hi, my experience at Howard was just like a family away from home. We were very close-knit, and these were children that I saw every day, and we just had a bond. When one hurt, the other one hurt. And we just learned to love on each other and to encourage each other so we could just go and obtain the goal that we had set for ourselves.
My experience at Howard, it was good. My best year was my senior year. I was very shy, so the friends that I did have were my cousin, and her name was Jaqueline also. And from the 7th grade through 12th grade, it was the two of us, and of course, everybody in the neighborhood and everybody in our community, we knew each other. So it was a very good experience.
Well, we had to walk. There were no buses for African American children back during the time when we attended school. The only time we thought that we would get a ride was when it rained. Oh, however, our dad, with three of us, I have two sisters, and our dad prepared us even for rainy weather. He bought galoshes. Back during that time, you remember the boots that you could put over your shoes?
Uh-huh.
He bought galoshes, umbrella, raincoat, rain hat, and even though he was a brick mason and couldn't work on rainy days, we still had to walk to school. But we were in the area, I guess you call it like airport area, when we were growing up. So it was several blocks, but it was a good little hike. Mm-hmm.
I lived on the West End, so we walked to school no matter what type of weather it was, rain, sleet, shine, or snow. We walked, and it was just a group of us. It was like a village. One person would get the train started, and we just walked to school and had fun.
I lived a mile from Howard High School, about a mile from Howard High School. And during the summer or the spring and fall, it wasn't difficult to walk to school every day. But during the winter, it was very hard. And we had a dress, what do you call the dress?
Dress code.
Dress code.
Mm-hmm.
So we could not wear pants to school.
Oh, no.
So you walked those very, very long miles in the cold. And, you know, I don't recall getting sick from walking in the cold, but it was very difficult. So when I got into the 11th grade, my cousin got her driver's license, and she lived right up the street from me. So when her father would let her, well, no, not her, but her sister had graduated from college, and she came home and got a job, and she would take us to school in the mornings. And then when I was a senior, my next door neighbor, who lived across the street from me, he started taking us to school. So it was much better, much better. But it was kind of hard.
When she said senior year, my senior year, I drove a school bus. So I did not have any problem with transportation my senior year.
Oh, that was
Yeah,
cool.
that
was cool.
Believe it or not, I drove a school bus, so that was really interesting. We only had 2 females that drove bus during that time. Everyone else was, guys. But the amazing thing about that was the fact that they had confidence in teenagers for us to transport ourselves plus a busload of about 40 plus children to school every day. And thank the Lord, never had an accident. None of us.
Well, I have a question for you. What was your income like? What did you get? What was your reimbursement for taking your classmates?
$35 a month.
Oh, that was good.
That's all we
Very
got.
good.
We got $35 a month. for
Wow,
driving.
that was a lot of money.
But I think one of the reasons we could contribute to non-accidents, the buses couldn't go but 35 miles an hour either.
But in my neighborhood, there was a man named Mr. Frank Pringle, and he had a bus. He had an old bus. And what he would do, he would go throughout Georgetown, and he would take kids to school. But you would have to pay 10 cents. And my mom could not afford to pay 10 cents for us to go to school, so we had to walk. We didn't have a choice.
A long time ago, I don't know if you remember when Georgetown used to have the fairgrounds, where the fairgrounds is now. That used to be an airport.
Yeah.
They used to have little individual, I guess you would say, airplanes.
Right.
I never had a favorite teacher. I just thought my experience was they were all, to me, really, they were prepared in their discipline, and they taught us. We learned a lot. We were exposed to a lot. They used whatever they could, because sometimes we didn't have the best of books back during that time, but they would use all kinds of resources to help educate us. Yeah, but I didn't have any favorites. I don't know about the other ladies.
I didn't have a favorite. They all treated us the same. And when they knew your parents, that mean that you paid attention, you just stayed on course with whatever they were saying, because you did not want them to go to your parents and give them this report that you were misbehaving. You just disrupt the class during instructional time. So all of them were my favorites.
Well, I had 3 favorite teachers: Mr. Rubin, Coach Smith, and Mrs. Patterson. And the reason why I like those 3 teachers, because they had high expectations for us. And I was the type of student, if I felt like I didn't have to do it, I wouldn't do it. So they were always encouraging me to do my very best. And Coach Smith, especially Coach Smith, he was my homeroom teacher. And he would be after me all the time, because he knew that I didn't like school that much. And so he was always after me about, coming to school, doing your work, just the expectation. I didn't want to disappoint him. So he just played a big part in my life.
Oh, we had
wow.
super school spirit, because our sports teams excelled.
Yeah.
We had championship football teams.
Yeah.
We had excellent basketball teams.
Yep.
Some of our classmates went to the pros.
Yep.
And football, basketball, and we had an excellent track team, because one of our classmates got a scholarship to go to Wilberforce by running track. Yeah.
And you might know him, Reverend Willie Walker.
Reverend William Walker.
He,
Alcohol
yes.
used to be
Yeah.
over alcohol and drug abuse.
Over alcohol and drug abuse.
He was the
the
executive
center.
director.
Yes.
But we had excellent sports teams.
Yeah.
even with track. Track was really popular during May Day. Remember
Oh,
we had those
yes.
May Day activities?
Yeah.
They'd run these
Oh,
relay
yeah.
races.
Yeah, we
and
had a
stuff,
good time.
And, oh my
during May
goodness,
Day.
it would be a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Wrapping
May
a maypole.
Yeah.
They had this tall pole and would have strips of different colors. And then you would walk in and out, walk in and out and stuff. And by the
Yeah.
time you got through, it looked like it was braided with these different colors.
And we had a May Day queen, and that was a way of honoring her. They were dancing, there were gymnastics, they were just all kinds of activities. And the finale ended with the May Day dance.
Yeah, that was
So it was a whole lot of fun. And if you were a senior and you were selected, you got to dance the waltz. And
Oh my goodness.
Mr. Brown, you remember we had two,
Brown.
Short
Yeah,
Brown.
we had two Browns.
He taught us how to waltz, and the first time I saw that, I said, when I become a senior, I'm going to dance the waltz, and I did. But he was so good. But they had us involved in some of everything. They kept us busy.
Like she said, that May Day activity in the evening, I had some cousins who were like acrobats.
Yeah.
They used to, I guess they practiced at home, but they would build on top of each other, tumble down into the Wilsons. They were very acrobatic back during that time.
We didn't have that.
Oh,
didn't
yes.
have that?
We did not have that.
Wow.
During
they
my
were-
time.
They were really sensational. And I'm not just saying it because they were my cousins, but they were great. They were
And
really great.
each grade had to have certain activity, and they had to have a certain activity, and they would select people to just do performance. The costumes, they had everything. I love home economics. Excuse me. And Mrs. Manigault, it was our job to make some of the costumes.
Wow.
So we were really involved in it.
And like she said, Mrs. Manigault, who headed that, her name was Miss Verbertine Manigault. That was Joey Manigault's mother.
Yes.
And his father taught us science. Yeah, in high school. After every football or basketball game, we had those socials.
Oh yeah, we did.
Remember
During
the
my
socials?
time,
During
yes.
your time, you didn't have that?
We did have that.
We had them sometimes.
We had, yeah.
Yeah.
used to go
It
to
all
the
depends
club.
if the parents would let us
The
go.
We used to go
big
to the
thing
club.
was
like it.
homecoming.
Yeah.
Homecoming. And that's when we would have, that's the last game and the game for the championship. And we would have this, we would have the team that we were going to,
Yeah, the opponents.
yeah, our opponents. And we had a funeral. I remember I was a cheerleader, and this was this happened in the 12th grade, and we were going to play C.A. Johnson, and we decided that we would put on a funeral for C.A. Johnson.
We certainly did.
We had the
Casket and everything.
We had the minister. I mean, it was a scream. I mean,
It was like an actual funeral.
It
We
was-
were burying C.E.
yeah, we were
before we
burying
played them.
C.A. Johnson. But we didn't win the game, but we sure had fun at the homecoming performance, yes.
Those were a part of our pep rallies.
Yeah,
Because we used to
yeah.
have those
Oh, we
pep
had the
rallies
pep rallies.
before we would have a game.
Game, yeah.
In the gym. Yeah, some of them in the auditorium.
Yeah, we
in
were
my
in the
time, we were
auditorium on
auditorium.
stage.
Yeah.
On stage,
Yeah.
that's what we did. Yeah.
Yeah, the cheerleaders led the pep rally.
Oh,
Yeah.
school. School was a lot of fun back during that time. And I guess one reason they put emphasis on extracurricular activities for us because growing up in a small town like Georgetown, there wasn't a whole
A lot to do
for
about
African American children.
Church.
So the church and the
Schools
really,
were our outlets.
That's right. Yeah, they did a lot. Well, other than sports and stuff after school, most of us, we just went home.
We went home and
Did you have homework?
work to do.
And you had chores at home, that you were expected to do. So after school, it's not like now. The kids are at school, some of them all day long. We didn't have a lot of after-school activities. Everything pretty much occurred during the school hours. The only other activities were special events, like you said, May Day and football.
I lived on Palm Street, and there were quite a few families on that street. And the average family size was 9.
Whoa.
So we had this entire street to ourselves after school. And we loved to play kickball. And we would divide the street up. And if you lived on the end of Palm Street, you had a game going. If you had lived in the middle of Palm Street, you had a game going. And we lived on the north end of Palm Street, and there was a game going. And we would play for about an hour and a half. And we got very, very good at kickball. And I never forgot the fun that we had. And when I started teaching, one of the things that I would do is I would teach my kids how to play kickball.
Well, we did in the West End, we double dutched. We would jump rope. We would jump rope. We would do marbles. We would make doll babies. Mm-hmm. We would get the silk, like during the planting season, like when it was corn, the silk from the corn, we would put it in a bottle, and we would braid the hair, and that's what we did.
And we also did skating.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah,
because
we
had a low skating, cement skating rink.
Uh-huh.
So that was fun too.
Well, I know in my house, wasn't but 3 of us. We weren't fortunate enough to have all of these people on our block. It was my 2 sisters and myself.
6 of us at our house.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
So my mom used a lot of that summertime to teach us crafts. So all of us, we learned how to sew. You had to start with an apron. I wanted to start with a skirt, but she said you had to start with an apron first. So we learned how to sew. She taught us how to crochet. We learned how to knit, because there wasn't, like I just said earlier, there weren't anything for us to do. There were no places for us to work. So then our parents just taught us different things to do at home. Mm-hmm.
And during my era, we did Vacation Bible School. We would go to different churches and interact with other children and just learn different activities. And that's what we did during the summer months, as well as running around the house with my siblings and learning how to dance. We would listen to the music and just come up with our own steps, yes.
Well, having 5 older brothers and sisters, that was a gift, because we spent our summer starting at 14 in New York or in Washington. And it was fun. It was fun. We met a lot of friends, and one of the things that we did, my older sister, the first thing she did is took us to church. There was a church around the corner, and we would go there. They were always having activities for the kids, and we started teaching Bible school. I thought we were pretty young, but they didn't think that we were. And we would teach Bible school, and we did that for 3 summers. Wow. And we would make $25 for 2 weeks. And that's where we would buy some of our things for school. Yeah.
In addition to what they said, we had Vacation Bible School throughout throughout Georgetown. And the ministers back then coordinated, because at Bethesda, the first 2 weeks after you got out of school, we had Vacation Bible School. Then they would go to other churches. Bethel would host it 1 week, and St. Stephen would host it, and First Calvary. Mm-hmm. So during the summertime, the children had something to do all summer, but something constructive, because they went, like you said, from one church to the next church. Now, I was fortunate, just like Jackie said, to go to my aunt and uncle. One summer, we spent the entire summer in New York, and my uncle used to take us to the Statue of Liberty, Coney Island. Oh, I climbed that statue twice. I was supposed to go back
I've climbed her once.
I went as a high school student. The second time I went as a young parent and carried my children, and I was supposed to go back to take the grandchildren, but at that time it was under renovation, so I didn't get to take the grands.
Did your lives turn out the way you thought they would when you were in high school? Did it come out to be what you hoped?
I think so too.
I think so.
We worked hard, we studied, we had fun, but they didn't play with us either now. Just like she said, the teachers kept encouraging us because they set goals and, like she said, expectations, and it was our responsibility to make sure we carry those things out. We were members of the National Honor Society. We were part of the Mu Alpha Theater, which was a mathematical group. We were part of the Student Council, Future Teachers of America,
Glee
Future
Club.
Scientists of America. We sang in the Glee Club. Oh, we did it all. Yeah.
And in my senior memory book, I wrote that one day I would become a school teacher. And it took me a while to get there, but I did it.
You did it.
I wasn't ready for college yet. Well, it wasn't that I wasn't ready. I knew I couldn't go. But I always had it in the back of my mind. And I needed that time. It took me 4 years to get to college. And I needed that time because I felt that when you were out of high school, you should be free. You know, there was
You were
no
grown.
club.
You consider yourself grown. I'm gonna do what I want to do.
And you know, I went to New York right after high school, and I would go back and forth, back and forth. And then after about 3 years, my mom told me, she said, "Jackie, what are you going to do with your life?" And, you know, I was just enjoying life. I work, I spend my money, I get another job, and then, you know, it went on and on, back and forth for 4 years. And then I had the opportunity to go to college, and I came back down south. And after 4 years, I became a teacher. When I was going to school, my classmates were coming out of college.
College, that's right.
But we still knew each other. We got together, and and it's been nice. It's been nice.
Our class of 1966, like she just said, had a really, really close bond. Since we finished high school, our first reunion was 10 years after we graduated. And every 5 years consecutively from there, we had a reunion. So we've had 10, 15, 20, 25, etc. Matter of fact, last December, we had our 56 because COVID kept us from having the 55th reunion. But like she said, now some of us, my dad had already told us, once you finish school, you're going to college.
Yeah, your parents had already pre-planned.
They pre-plan your life. So graduate in June, and honey, by August or September,
You were gone.
you were packed up and ready to be taken to school. My older sister went to college. She was 1 year ahead of me, graduated in 1965. So we took her to college, and the next year was my turn. So then my dad said, "Are you going where your sister is?" I said, "No, I want to go someplace else." So
identity.
yes, I didn't want to be at the same school where she went. But I went to college, and in 4 years, I didn't plan to be a teacher. I had planned to be a social worker. And I have a degree in sociology and social work that I never used.
What?
Because when I returned to Georgetown, believe it or not, they were not hiring African American social workers. So here I am, college degree, and no job. Our principal, our high school principal, Mr. David H. Drayton, called my house one day and he asked, "You girls got a job yet?" I said, "No, sir." My oldest sister had graduated. She didn't have a job. I didn't have one. And Mr. Drayton hired me to come to assist the guidance counselor at Howard High School. By that time, he had been a little ill and could not do the writing. He was still functional intellectually, but physically he couldn't. So I was doing the writing because at that time, like she said earlier, you had to make a transition from either Howard or Winyah. And he could not keep the records. So I was hired as an assistant to the guidance and counselor. My former principal got me started. And believe it or not, when I retired from teaching, I honored him by presenting him a plaque. He stood there and he just cried because I told his wife to tell him to come, but don't tell him why. Yeah. 30 years of teaching, and my former principal got me started in that.
Well, when I graduated from college, they were hiring African American social workers. So therefore, that's what I do now. I'm a licensed medical social worker. Yes, for the state, South Carolina. Yeah.
Well, I went to school, like she said, I went to school in Charlotte, North Carolina, and I had a job, but I was engaged to get married to this gentleman.
What?
And he didn't want to live in Charlotte. He wanted to come back to Pawleys Island. So that's how I ended up not being able to fulfill that social work in Georgetown. But I didn't. I gave up my job because I wanted to marry that man. So what do you do?
What do you do?
Follow your heart. Follow your heart. Yeah.
Well, I must say, okay, I was fortunate. My school experience was great, and my children had good school experiences. My oldest daughter went to Georgetown High School. And by the time my boys got ready to really get involved in school, they were building Waccamaw because we were living in Pawleys Island. So she stayed at Georgetown and graduated from Georgetown High School, but both of my sons graduated from Waccamaw. Respect during that time was not any different from when we were in school. I think home discipline and how, like she said, how the parents, they knew who we were, and our children didn't act up because they knew if you did, those
Mama
teachers
get
were
a
going
report.
to, they were going to call us, and we would have to get in line. My grandchildren were even, some of them still in school now, but the first three were really, really, really in a great school. They graduated from Fort Mill High School in Fort Mill, South Carolina. They participated in the band. They started off with my grandson playing the trumpet, and then he ended up playing the mellophone, because when he was a freshman in high school, the chair was empty because a mellophone person was graduating. So the next year, sophomore year, he ended up playing that instrument. It had the same fingering as a trumpet. Then here comes the next grandchild who played a clarinet, was in the band. And the last one played the flute. They were in a 200 plus piece band.
Wow.
My grandson, his junior year, he ended up being the assistant director of the band, and his senior year, he's directed the band. And they were in bands. I traveled with them to Indiana, I went to Missouri. Whatever they were going on, I was right there. Grandmother was right there with the foods and the snacks for everybody. So everybody called me Grand, not just my grandchildren. But it was excellent. They had an excellent experience.
That's where the village comes in at.
You're right about that.
That's where the village comes in at.
And now the latter three who are in school, my grandchild number, gotta think, 4, he was a percussionist. And grandchild number 5 played the clarinet. And grandchild number 6, believe it or not, we laughed the other day, he has picked the trombone. I said, trombone? He said, Grandma, I love the way that thing slides slides up and down. He's a 6th grader at Waccamaw Intermediate, and he's learning how to play the trombone.
Oh, yes. I feel, there's a lot of pity for the teachers of today with all the things that are going on. And the pandemic, I mean, it just came into our schools, and I don't know what's going to happen to the majority of the children, even the ones here in Georgetown. And when you listen to what is going on, if it was me, I think I would have to find another profession. I really would. I taught school for 34 years, and I loved every bit of it because to me, teaching was not difficult. My children knew what to expect from me, and they knew what I expected from them. And and I said, teaching, I have a cousin, he asked me one time, he said, well, what do you do as a teacher? And I said, I use my imagination. And I said, you have to be very imaginative, you have to be very creative to work with children. And then you have to have expectations, and you have to allow them to grow. Now, when they first come to you, they just, remember what they did last year. Okay, that's fine. But I love teaching, and in May, I had to go to Georgetown Memorial Hospital. I had to have a slight procedure. And who walked in my room? About 3 of my former students. And they were so excited to see me, and I was so excited to see them. And they treated me like I was a queen. And one of them told me, Miss Tucker, I'm going to be your nurse this morning. And that made me, and then she told me, she said, I've already called Mitchell in New York and told him that I'm going to be your nurse this morning.
Beautiful.
So it's entirely different, but I love every aspect of it.
I enjoyed my teaching experience. I had 30 years in the classroom, and believe it or not, I was pretty young when I retired after 30 years, so I sat home for 3, completely bored. You didn't realize how much you missed the children and everything that was going on. But before those 3 years, my former principal became the executive director in human resources and asked me to come in and get the training in the Office of Teacher Evaluation. So I went back. She said, I might be able to use you 2 or 3 years. I did that for 7. Wow. So I gave Georgetown County 37 years in the educational field. But like she said, I loved every minute of it. I set goals for my students, and I made sure, back during that time, we would pretty much they had individual desks, but I would put my desks together and group them, almost make it like a table. And you made sure when you checked test scores of students that you had a variety at the table. You didn't put all of the top students at the table together. You may put a top one at each one, and then people who were mediocre was in there, and then the slow ones, but they helped each other because they did not know who was slow. They didn't know who could, learn quickly. But we as teachers, you could look at those things and then kind of jiggle things around and make sure that everybody was, because everybody didn't learn at the same pace. I remember once we were doing a session on poetry, because March was Music in Our School Months, and it also brought in poetry. And we were getting ready to do a presentation for the school. And some kids could learn these long poems and recite from the beginning to end. Others might be able to do a few lines. So what I did, I grouped them. Whatever poem was given, I gave him 2 or 3 lines, the next one 2 or 3 lines, and the 3 of them went up together. Well, the day we were supposed to make this presentation, it rained. And we came to school looking so pretty because we dressed up in our little Sunday, go to meeting because we were going to be filmed. And it was just so happened that the person who was supposed to film us at school didn't end up filming us. We ended up with a person from the district, came to visit that day, Rosemary Amica, I think her name was. And she filmed us. And I have that to this day on one of those old one of them floppy disks or VHS, whatever it is. Yes. And I mean, I look back at it and I say, wow, these people now have finished college in the working world and stuff. But I wouldn't want to teach now. Like she said, that pandemic changed. I wouldn't want to have to write these lesson plans that they had to deal with, working some days in the classroom, working remotely and stuff. I think I enjoyed my experiences better. Mm-hmm.
I have, and it's very difficult to be the social worker and they are the clients, yes. it's hard. But I'm a jolly person, so I just make it an easy transition so I could assist them as much as possible in helping them overcome the obstacles. Yes.
You know, we didn't mention anything about dates. The only, honey, I had 2 dates, junior prom and senior prom. My dad would not let us go out with these young men when we were, and even though we were in high school, he still would not let us date. But we did go to junior and senior prom. But let me tell you the funny part about my junior prom. The guy who I was dating did not have a driver's license. My other friend, the guy she was dating, he didn't have one. So we were escorted in a station wagon by Mrs. Wilson, a cousin of theirs. So my date and I'm sitting in the middle, he's sitting by the door, by the driver, and the other couple was sitting on the back seat. And that's how we got to our junior prom. Kids today, they would never agree to have somebody chauffeur them to the prom.
I had 2 dates
Oh, wow.
in my senior year.
Okay.
And this boy, he liked me, I liked him, and he asked me to go to the movies. And I said, well, I'll have to ask Mama, and then if you want to take me to the movies, you're going to have to come and ask her. So he came to the house. He asked Mama if I could go to the movies. And of course, you know, who are your parents and this and that, and we went through all of that. So by the time we got to the movies and we're sitting there, and he's holding my hand, and all of a sudden I felt this tap on my shoulder, and I have an identical twin sister. And I looked over my shoulder, and she said, and I was so embarrassed, and he turned around, and he just looked at her. And then he took me to the senior prom. So he had to come back and ask if he could take me to the senior prom.
They had to get permission.
You had to get permission. You had to get permission.
And they even told them what time to have you back.
Right. When he took me to the movies,
Uh-huh.
no later than 10 o'clock.
10 for you, but 12 in my time.
Oh,
Okay.
okay. At least you had 2 more hours,
At
girl.
12, uh-huh.
But we didn't ride in cars. We didn't.
A lot of the young people did not have cars.
Yeah,
We
the
had
guys,
cars.
they had
By
cars.
her, by the time she got there,
we
they
had cars.
Yeah.
We had cars, yes.
Now, my senior year, the young man that took me, he was able to drive. So I was able to
Yeah.
go in his parents' car. But a lot of children didn't have automobiles.
Yeah, but we had
Most of the
boundaries.
guys.
Boundaries. We could not go in a certain part of the town. We could not go across the street to High Market Street. But being kids, one would look to the left and one would look to the right, and we would say, it's clear, and boop, boop. And we would go to where Mercedes lived, that area, the airport. Uh-huh.
We
You
were
weren't supposed to go anywhere.
No, we were supposed to stay
within.
on the west end. But we were very adventurous, and we would want to go to the airport, so we would go across.
and don't forget the Checkerboard Club.
Oh, well, yeah.
We went there. Well, I was looking in my book, and I saw that after commencement, after the commencement program, that we were invited to the Checkerboard Club.
Oh, I didn't know that. My dad
And
never
I
would
wrote
let
it.
us
I
go.
wrote it down.
Really?
And I guess we went. And
I've
then
never been in there.
You've never been?
One other
Never been to
time.
checkerboard, never been to Sticks.
I've never been to Sticks. And then one other time when I was a senior, we snuck off the porch one Sunday because, you know, you couldn't do anything on Sundays except go to church. And you could sit on the porch, but you couldn't do anything and go anywhere because that was the Sabbath day. And we just snuck off the porch and we went. And we weren't aware that our neighbor was watching. So we were in the Checkerboard Club and we were just dancing and having a good time. We were doing the duck. That was one of the favorite
popular.
popular dance, the duck. And And all of a sudden, I was doing the duck, and I was flapping my arms, and I was getting ready to look down. You know, you had to duck.
You had to do it acting like it.
And I looked up, and I saw these shoes in at the door, and it was Mr. Orsi, our neighbor.
Oh, wow.
And how we got home before he did is beyond me, because he was driving.
Oh,
but when
wow.
he came home, we were sitting on the front porch, and that was the end of that.
Well, I went to the checkerboard every Sunday with my older sister because we went to evening services with her girlfriends at First Calvary Missionary Baptist Church. So we would lag behind the adults, and we would sneak in the checkerboard. And I was called the checkerboard baby because I was the youngest one in there. And we had a good time.
By the time she came through, parents were becoming a little more lenient. They were really strict. They were really strict on us when she got to do a few things that we didn't. Now, we did have a club called the Chez Paris.
Oh, the ship.
And my sister was a senior, and they had an after school dance, and we were able to go there for a couple of hours to the Chez Paris. You remember Miss Blondell Knox had that?
You had to be 18 to even go in.
It was supposed to be.
Yeah. My sister came home right after graduation because my grandfather died. And she took me, they would have the supper club, that part of the Chez Paris, and she took me out there. She took me to dinner, and I thought I thought
I didn't even know about that.
she all that hair I had on my head. She pinned it up, and she put a little bit of lipstick on me, and we went out to have dinner. And my twin sister, she couldn't understand why couldn't I go? Why couldn't I go? And she must have done something to make my sister angry because she said, "You're not going. I'm only taking Jackie."
Oh, wow. I guess that's the advantage of having older siblings.
Yes.
My
so good.
my sister was just 1 year older than me, so wherever she went, I went. And then we would drag the other sister, who was the younger one. She was 4 years younger. I know we're supposed to be winding things up, and we shouldn't be leaving on a sad note, but I do remember you're thinking about the saddest thing that happened was we lost a classmate on class night, after our class night play. The play was entitled Enchanted Mirror.
Yes.
And she died. And for graduation, baccalaureate, and for commencement, her chair was draped and stuff, and decorated and stuff. That was one of the saddest moments that we encountered.
And the day we graduated on June the 2nd, and a building burned down that night, June the 2nd.
That was another
at
sad
Howard
one.
High School.
Yeah.
And the only part of the building they were able to save, I think it was the auditorium.
Right. So those were two of the saddest things that
Yeah.
happened. The fire the night after, and thank the Lord it happened after graduation.
Yeah, we were home already. Yeah.
No, not really. We were all.
I was here teaching,
Yeah, we were in the working world then.
but I don't
Concentrated-
recall.
What I did, I looked. November 5th, 1981 is when that occurred. But like she said, we were in our careers, deeply into
Yeah.
career. I had a family, was raising children, trying to get them educated and stuff. So that didn't affect us very much. But it brought back sad memories when y'all burned, because we reflected on what we went through when Howard had the fire.
And when Howard had the fire, that same night, Rosemary, they had a fire at Rosemary School in Andrews.
Wow.
That sounds.
I wrote that in my
the
book,
papers
too.
state that those things probably was awesome, but we don't know.
Yeah.
You know.
You don't know.
Well, one thing I do want to relate, my junior year, I was elected Miss Howard for our upcoming senior year. So I was Miss Howard of 1966. And that was one of the highlights of my high school
The
career.
coronation was beautiful. I'll always remember because we represented the 12th grade and we gave her the honor.
And they still do.
Yeah.
Yeah, even though at my age, we've been out of school for almost 57
We
years.
always remember our queen.
And they always still call me Miss Howard. I said, but we've had some really, she has her senior memory book.
Tell us about your memory book.
The memory book, as we were transitioning from childhood to adulthood, we just wrote sayings or quotes or well wishes to each classmate to just let them know they could always look back and see how we felt about them and how we still feel about them. And when I looked in the book today, it just brought back good memories, the innocence. Yes, when your parents were responsible for you. And it makes me appreciate life now, the age that I am, and knowing how hard it was, the trials and the tribulations and what it takes to become an adult and to be stable and just go forth and set the goals for yourself and just keep working at it, keep pushing. Open it. No. These are the cards. When we graduated, each senior received a card with their names on it, and we exchanged cards.
That went in our graduation invitations.
And
You might list your favorite food and your favorite song and
everything.
Favorite dance.
dance.
And I just have clippings from the parades and the different events that happened during my senior year. So that's,
Yeah.
yeah,
I know that's a treasure.
it
Oh,
is.
yes. And all of us have, everybody got one of those. I think the only thing we did not mention was the school cafeteria.
Oh, now, what you talking about?
We had the best
Best food.
lunches for 25 cents that you would ever. You could go in a restaurant now and eat the kind of meal that we had for 25 cents.
Yes.
I'm serious. They made homemade buns when we had
Cinnamon rolls.
Yeah.
Because my mom worked in the cafeteria and she made those cinnamon buns.
those cinnamon buns were, oh my God,
Awesome.
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 I'm still trying to learn how to make them now. Not only that, they made homemade buns for our hamburgers
Burgers,
and our hot dogs. We didn't have no store bought. They got there early enough, I guess, with the yeast and everything else it took. And we had homemade buns for hot dogs, hamburgers. I'm serious.
We did.
We have had a good experience. Beautiful. I wouldn't trade it for nothing. 25 cents, and those lunches were awesome.
Well, my lunch was a little bit more. We paid 75 cents. Yeah.
By the time you
When
came through the rank. And believe it or not, a lot of the children couldn't afford the 25. They would go around with what they called bumming. Mercedes, I need a nickel. I need a nickel. They might have 20 cents and need 5 more cents, and you just, out of your allowance, you just lend
we
them
loved each
whatever.
other.
Oh, you
Like
got
that.
allowance?
Oh yeah, we got an allowance every week. Because, well, there wasn't but 3 of us, you got to remember. Larger families probably weren't.
6 of us.
And you didn't get an allowance.
No, ma'am.
We got an allowance every week. And what we did also, like you said, other after school activities, my dad was a master bricklayer. And he used to take young men with him on weekends to help build steps or put down tombstones. So this particular time, my sisters and I told him, say, you know, Daddy, we can go with you and we could do that. We can mix the mortar and stuff for you and make that, so we were getting our allowance, plus that extra money from going with him. Several of these cemeteries around here have tombstones that my dad put in. I was amazed the other day, I took a picture of it and sent it to my grandchildren. Mr. Walter Manigault Sr., he had a funeral home on North Fraser Street when we were young. It's now where Livingston Auto Repair, because they bought a piece of that property. My dad put his tombstone in 1968. That tombstone was as tall as that file cabinet over there, or a little bit taller. And when that day when we were going, he had all of this stuff on the back of the truck. I said, Daddy, what are you gonna do with all of that? You'll see. You'll see. He used to call it Stinker. You'll see, Stinker. And I figured out what in the world is he gonna do with it? He had more reinforcement under that stone. And to this day, with all of the hurricanes and everything else that have passed, it still stands erect in Bethesda Cemetery.
Wow.
I took a picture of it and sent it to my grandchildren so they can see. And that's why I keep telling them, whenever the older ones are telling you things, listen. Take these treasures as a part of your life because they mean something. It'll help and guide you along the way. It did it for us, and we're doing it for them.
Yes.